Yeah.
Well, way to go. Okay. So we're going to talk briefly about Java 25. For those folks that haven't used Java in like a decade, the language has changed a ton. And hopefully I can convince you that modern Java is kind of the way to go here. So first, before I do get started, what version of Java are currently people using? Like what's your current version like at work?
21 for us.
21? Okay, 21. No eights. No
17.
We have
17.
We have 8. We have
Okay.
8, 11, 17, 20.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's a segue to this slide. So, oops, you get rid of that. Okay. So you'll notice that 8 doesn't even fit on this slide anymore. That's because it's really old. So if you're on it, stop. Right now, I don't know if people aren't aware, Java moved to a twice a year cadence for delivering features. And so rather than like waiting 6 or 7 years for a new release of Java, they basically, if a feature is ready to go, they just put it in the current version, they move on. So this has been tremendously beneficial to the both the language features that have been added, and then also again, Java is not just a language, it's a runtime, that's APIs. So there's improvements across the board. So anyway, you'll notice that Java 25 is a long-term support release, meaning they're going to support that for several years. So what companies tend to do is, notice 11, 17, 21, those are what people were talking about. They tend to kind of gravitate towards these long-term releases. I will say that moving between Java versions now is less painful than it used to be. Like moving from 8 to 11 was really painful. Moving to 17 was pretty painful because of the Jakarta Java EE transition. I think a lot of those speed bumps hopefully are gone now. So there may be, I would encourage folks to even if there's an incremental release, there's probably benefit and moving to that. If you start supporting just there's less friction there nowadays. So anyway, 25 comes out next month, September 16th. It's a big release, and I'm trying to cover some of the really cool features.
I'm going to point out that 16th is actually my birthday, so you're doing it for me.
I'm doing it for you, yes. Okay. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what Java 25. Like I mentioned, there's obviously language features. Module import declarations. It's kind of interesting. So rather than having to import individual packages or classes, you can actually say and import a module, which will be like all the classes in a module, right? So like, again, module system was kind of introduced in 9. I don't know, a lot of people like outside of Oracle don't really use it, I don't think. But this will allow you to like import like all of the Java-based classes without having to enumerate them all in your imports. Pretty handy. Compact source and instance methods. This is more targeted at new developers, bringing people into the Java ecosystem. If you look around the room, the age of the average person in this room is probably on the high end. We probably want to change that. So you will see there's a focus within, we'll get into this, but within the Java community to start kind of like building back that mind share at the university level. Flexible constructors, same thing. I'll get into that in a bit. And then primitives and patterns, these are like language features. Notice that some of these have stars on them. That means they're a preview feature, meaning they're feature complete, but they might change. So, they will say that it's not ready for production, but I would argue that many times it's okay. Like we'll get into something that we did at Netflix. That's in preview release in 24. That is final in 25. And it had great benefit for us. And then the runtime itself, I want to call a big one here is compact object headers. This is basically like every object in Java has 12 bytes of information that kind of gets tagged along. Compact object headers is trying to reduce that to 64 bits, so 8 bytes, and I think that we're going to see some very interesting performance gains out of that. They are claiming your heap size will drop by 20%. It also then is going to be very beneficial to all your garbage collectors, which have also, there's some improvements to garbage collection in 25 that this all equates to about a 10% CPU reduction and 20% memory reduction. And if you are on a cloud and you're paying for these things, this is essentially something you will get quote unquote for free by just upgrading. So there's a lot of benefit there in doing that. Couple of things ahead of time, method profiling and command line ergonomics. This is just basically, another way to get Java apps to start quicker. Basically, run a Java application, create a cache of all the stuff that the just-in-time compiler has done. And then when you relaunch a program, rather than having to do that again, it loads the cache and it moves along its merry way. There are obviously other things within the Java ecosystem, like Graal, like compiling to native applications. I'm sure Josh will get into that. Anyway, really cool. And then the JFR enhancements, just profiling like enhancements to that. As far as API goes, scoped values are really cool. Kind of like goes hand in hand with virtual threads. So I don't know if people are aware, virtual threads became final in Java 21. We've had a couple of talks here on that subject. Basically kind of decouples using a thread in Java with the underlying platform thread, allows you to scale these to 1 million threads rather than limits on the underlying OS. But the problem with that is using thread locals becomes kind of an issue. If you have a thread local and you have 1 million threads, then you have 1 million copies of your thread local. It becomes a memory problem. Scope values are kind of there to kind of address that issue. Structured concurrency still in preview, number 5 now. I've been waiting for this thing to become final, but it's not yet. This is basically allowing you to schedule a bunch of concurrent work, several threads, and as an atomic unit and fail them together, or succeed on the whatever one returns quickest. Very cool. Stable values is kind of an interesting API also. It's allowing you to do one time at least, or at most once initialization, but not having to do something crazy like double lock checking, that sort of thing. So it's another really kind of interesting feature. And then vector API and cryptology enhancements. I'm not really touching on that. I gotta keep moving because I'm running out of time. And as a reminder, if you are on Java 21, Java 25 is also a function of all of the intermediate versions that have come before it. So just wanted to kind of touch on a couple of things here. There's been several improvements to the GGC garbage collector, and then doing markup and comments is kind of something that is a little, okay, sure. And in string gatherers, which I know that next month we're going to try to cover, right, Bijou? You were saying you want to do that. And then there was also a performance issue with virtual threads where in certain situations, when using synchronize, it would pin it to the underlying platform thread, and it would cause all kinds of concurrency issues that you would not expect. So they fixed that in Java 24. There's no reason to not use virtual threads, in my opinion, using Java 25 because they fixed this final thing. If you have an application that has a lot of blocking I/O, you will see great benefit again in your cloud spend. You can use less instances of your Java nodes and do more work with virtual threads. So it's solving kind of the same problem that reactive programming is doing, but it's doing it in a way that's not nearly as complex. So anyway. Okay, runtime improvements. I kind of mentioned this already. Compact object headers, this is the big thing here. Like if you have no other reason to upgrade to Java 25, it's this. Reducing your heap size by 20% and reducing your CPU up to 10%. This is kind of and then the number of GCs is reduced as well. Also, the garbage collectors have gotten better. So combining these two things and running them with virtual threads, you're going to be reducing your cloud spend by quite a bit, in our opinion. So I just want to touch on it anecdotally at Netflix. The compact object headers was a preview feature in 24. We turned that on in production, and we saw similar numbers to this. So we actually rolled this out to production in quite a few places. So pretty neat. Okay, mention modern Java. Flexible constructor bodies. This is really cool. Prior to this release, you couldn't put any code before you called super or called this on like a nested constructor. It was really annoying. That's been fixed. So you can do things like validation. This will not compile in any version prior to Java 25. So neat. I mentioned string gatherers. This is actually was released in 24, but it's also, again, if you're moving from 2021, this is going to be something that basically it's flexible intermediate stream operations. So if you're using the Stream API, this just gives you the ability to like hook into that pipeline, build your own like gatherers, which are basically you can do one-to-one or convert something to many or many to one. Like obviously all these things are supported. Really cool. There's some built-in gatherers. You can see I listed a couple of them there. Cool. Scope values. I kind of mentioned this already. This is the basically the equivalent of what thread locals used to do for per thread, but now this is basically allowing you to basically like concretely start the life cycle of your thread local, and you don't have to worry about cleaning it up later. It runs out of scope. It gets cleaned up. It's really cool. It's immutable. So meaning once the value is set, nothing else can change it. That was another problem with thread local. At any point you could call set your thread local and change it. So, and the other thing, this works great with virtual threads. Stable values. I mentioned this already. It's deferred initialization. May not be obvious at first if you are just new to the language, but having to have something that's static and then keep it null, and then the first time you access it, create that object. This is kind of solving that problem. So I have a little example code here, and at the bottom, just kind of printing out like how much time is spent since the class was loaded. So again, I'm not going to get into too much detail, so I can moving on here. But we're going to cover these features in detail next month. So put all this stuff in the back of your mind and figure out which things you want to hear about, and we will go over them in more detail. Okay, I mentioned this already. We had Heather Vancura here last year, and she made a really compelling argument for Java is not being really taught within the universities anymore.
Actually, in high schools, APCSA uses Java.
Thank you. That's awesome. That's
My
good to hear.
daughter, so she gave the APCS, it was in Java. So.
Okay, good. Well, that's good to hear. It's rare. So anyway, you will find that they've added quite a few features to make this easier, right? Like if you're a new, and again, why does this matter to everybody that's been in the Java for a long time? You need to have fresh blood coming into our ecosystem, right? So I'm really excited about these features. So like this is what it takes today, right? Go install Java, install Maven or Gradle, go install an IDE, go write your code, and run it, right? Like again, if you are a new developer, this is going to be overwhelming. Do you really need to know what Maven and Gradle are doing right out of the box? Probably not. Eventually you'll want to. So anyway, so look, fine. Let's take out the build component and just say, cool, you're going to install Java. I use VS Code here instead. So like again, trying to simulate what a newer user might have already. But you can see the language is still pretty verbose. That's the tag on Java has always been, oh, it's so verbose. That's changed. The new language features have made it better. So let's look at what Java 25 looks like today. Just a couple of things to call out. You still have to install Java. There's no way around that. But you'll notice now that there's no class at all, no class declaration. You'll notice the main method is no longer static. You'll notice there's no imports because I mentioned already there's module imports and there's an implicit import of all the Java-based classes. So some very cool stuff there. Using records on the other side, you'll notice that all that boilerplate, getters and setters is just gone. So it's very cool.
Yeah, so what we have been using is we have been using MIS, M-I-S-E. So MIS, so basically that you can install multiple versions of Java,
Yep.
Go, Python, Node.js. So that's actually even easier than using SDK.
Okay, what is it called?
MIS, M-I-S-E.
Okay, that's something new. I've never heard that. So I've been using SDK Man forever. I think a lot of
like at least in my project we have Go, we have Python, we have Node.js, and we have Java, all four.
Oh, Cool.
Right, so Mies actually does all the 4.
Okay, I'm gonna ping you on that later because I'm really curious about it. Okay, that's it for me. I have to do this slide because
Been messing with that lately too, and it's very convenient, it's project level. So you can just stick something, kind of like your your Gradle settings file in your directory. You just say, hey, by the way, this is a Java 24 project. Give me, what's Gradle like these days? Are they at 9 or still on 8?
I think they're an 8, but moving to 9. Yeah.
Yeah, you can even say, give me Gradle 7 or Maven.
Yeah.
Thank you, kind sir.
Leeway.
Way of the Lee. No, whoops. Look at that. You just knew exactly what I was about to do. Struggle with that. Oh. All right. Well, that was a tough act to follow.
Oh, I don't think so.
I do. I wanted to just cover a bunch of because I did a thing. I talked with y'all recently, like this year even. Now, it feels like yesterday, but it was actually it was not. It was not yesterday. It was actually more than yesterday. So it's been a hot minute. I didn't know what all we could talk about. I could I figured I could just tap on ride again your coattails and sort of look ahead, look at some of the stuff that's happening in spring. We're having our big old spring 1 show in Vegas next week. That's like adult day camp, right? It's a summer camp. It's spring camp, and so that'll be fun. If you want to, because where people want to go is Vegas in the summer. That's the right place to be in the summer. So that's where I'm going to be next week. And I was thinking about what could we talk about and what's fun. And you're doing a Java 25 talk, and I thought, well, that's good. We got Spring Framework 4 and Spring Boot. Sorry, Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4. Oh, Gesundheit. Thank you. And we got a bunch of stuff. And then there's also just some stuff I would love to, in the theme of bigger, better Java. I figured we could talk about that as well. So with that in mind, my name is Josh. I work on the Spring team in my capacity as a Spring developer advocate, and I'm a Java champion. And just recently, don't ask me why or how, either of those questions, and I'll leave. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I have no idea why, but I'm a Microsoft MVP now. That's new. I'm a GDE alumnus, so that'll be, that's don't ask about that either. Look, we all do things we're not proud of, and I am a YouTuber. I've got a little YouTube channel here. You can find me there. Like and subscribe. It's not the worst mistake you're going to make this year. It's coffee software. Coffee software. And I run this with my buddy Deshaun, and I run it with my buddy James Ward. So there's the 3 of us, and we got this little channel. We're going to be like the Baoding of YouTube. It's going to be awesome. You just watch. So there's that. And look, I shouldn't have mentioned that because there's actually a bunch of videos that explain some of the stuff we're going to look at today. So if you wanted to leave right now, you would and just watch those videos. You're probably better off. But okay. So there's that. Look, we're going to cover a bunch of stuff. Some of which I did. Apparently, BJ reminded me I did a 2-hour talk just a few months ago, and that was before. That was in April, May, June, something like that. I've been to 40 countries since then. I have been sick with antibiotics 3 different times since then. It has been an age since I've been here. It may be just a few meetings for you, but for me, my lungs are stretched and contorted in ways you can't even imagine from all that respiratory illness being on that many planes. So yes, it feels like yesterday, but a lot has changed. So I'm excited to talk about all the good stuff that just looking forward, just modern Java stuff, not just Java 25, but modern Java stuff. So let's pick up where you left off. I wanted to talk about the new feature in Java 25 and kind of because that new feature you mentioned, the implicit, what did you call them? Implicit classes? Yeah, implicit classes, right? I just call them classless classes because they are like me, classless. And and so one of the things I've been doing for years, right? I have this little alias. If I go here, desktop, that's okay. Let me go to my old my second favorite place on the internet here. Nope, come on, I can't type it in. Laptop, I don't use it. Let's see. So just hit enter, and there I've got a little program, right? UAO. That's an alias right there. Can you see? You can't see that. Oh yeah, you can. The people in Zoom can't see it because ironically, Zoom doesn't support zooming. It's true. That's a fact. It's just terrible software. So anyway, that is an alias there. That's an alias. It's called UAO. And that alias, if can I do this? Can I look at my alias? Yeah, there. It does Java enable preview source 24 and then unzip and open .java. So this is a script that I use. It's a script written in Java. It's a Java script. The only good and appropriate use of JavaScript. That's okay. It's too awesome. The HDMI cable just couldn't handle it. I get it. Can't stand the heat. Get out of the kitchen. So that's an actual JavaScript. It's the only appropriate use of the word JavaScript. All the other JavaScripts are terrible. Okay, don't use those. This is the only one. Now, this feature is as you mentioned a preview feature at the moment, but in Java 25 you'll be able to drop dash enable preview dash source 24, and you can just say Java and then point it to a Java source code file, right? So if you look at that, actually you can do that today. Like if I go over here, let's go make dir temp cd temp nvim main.java, okay, and then I do public class main, okay, and then I do this public static void main string. End it now, please. I'm so tired.
It's good to be able to follow along.
System out dot print line hi. Okay, and then okay, so you can do this already. This is a thing you can do in GA Java 24 right now. Okay, what's different is that now if I go back here in vim main.java and I get rid of that and I get rid of this and I get rid of that and oh nope, okay, delete this, delete that, okay, and that. Now if I want to run this, right, this doesn't work in Java 24, right? So it fails. But like I say, enable preview dash source 24 main.java, right? So that'll work, right? So you can script, right? You can write scripts in Java with aplomb and ease. The same alacrity with which people deploy Python, but except this doesn't suck, right? It has a type system, for Pete's sake. Can you imagine? Imagine. Not type hints. This is a real type system. You can actually compile code and get better results as a result of using it. So this is nice. This is a huge, huge leap forward insofar as it's a huge leap backwards. It's a thing that we should have had 30 years ago, but we finally do. Okay. And this is why I think we get a lot of really good traction if people were able to just like, if we just release Java as like whatever, espresso and a new language, just call it something else, refactor the packages. People would be like, oh, okay, it's got everything I need. Why wouldn't I use this, right? And some of the other things that I've long surmised that the next frontier for Java is not the middleware server side infrastructure tier. It's the really large stuff like cloud native systems and all that kind of stuff, and the really small stuff. And so in that regard, I think of like scripting, just bash it. Yeah, yes, sir. I'm using Java 24, which is the only acceptable use of Java today. It's there are no other versions that will not get you laughed at in today's world. Java 25 comes next month, September, and that version will then become the only version that is acceptable to be used, right? Java 24. By the way, I'm using SDK man, and I'm gonna check out mice, but I would mention you can do like if you go wait, is this a Maven project? No, it's not. But if I do SDK init env, is it? I think. Do that, right? And then, or maybe it's SDK env init. There you go. And that creates a SDK man RC, right? So now if I go over here, I say SDK use Java 17. I don't have it. SDK install. No, SDK list. See, I don't even have it installed. I don't even have it installed. Why would I ever use something that ancient, right? Okay, let's see. Java, let's see. What do I have here? 2402. Okay, I'm gonna take a big step backwards here just for this demo. I would never do this on purpose, but we'll do it here. Okay, I'm gonna just for you. I'm gonna do hey. Okay, I'm gonna do SDK use Java 2401, creaking the old, long since invalid version of Java from the distant past. So SDK install Java. I think is this no SDK list Java? What did I have here? the string, yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Okay, and there's this SDK use Java, this one, right? So now Java version, that's Java 24.01. Now I go into this directory. Now I'm in Java 24.02, right? Java version. So you can manage on a project basis this the version of Java you're using, which is nice, and the Maven and the Gradle and the Scala and the Kotlin and whatever. Okay, so anyway, I've got this script, right? And I think this is already pretty good. But the real question that I'm sure all of you are going to ask is, can I like script it, right? And this is a JavaScript in effect. You can do already the most important stuff. But what if I wanted to like build a Spring Boot application? Can I do that with just a script? And the answer is no. Like why? But yes. Okay, we found a way. So I have a I don't know what I'm doing, right? Clearly, but I know people on the Spring team who do. This poor guy and others, right? And so what I do is I whisper and then yell into people's ears and just beg, you know. I've got no shame. So I went to one of the engineers. I said, "What if we could do this? What if we could like in Java 25, they're gonna have this like classless. I think they should call them Josh classes, right? Like classless classes, and we should have support for that." And so I talking to the good, the great, the inimitable, the amazing Dr. David Sire, and he he's a sick man. So he here I'm going to show you. This is it's not right, but it's okay. So here's a script. Okay, have you heard of JBang? That's the first question. JBangDev. Okay, this one. Okay, this is a set of tools to let you script Java programs. And this exists, you can work on this, you can use this in Java, not that you would ever would, but you could use like Java 17, right? But it provides a bunch of other stuff that go a bit further than what you get out of the SDK. And honestly, I think a lot of the stuff should be put into the JDK proper. But this plus Java 25 offers a very, very nice opportunity. One of the things that you get in JBang is this preprocessor model, right? So can you see that there? This is the shebang line right there, right? User bin env JBang. And then this, and this is just stock for every single JBang script. Then you can say, I want to use Java 25. So it'll download Java 25 if you don't have it. So you have to have JBang installed. It'll then make sure you've got Java 25 installed. I'm enabling preview features, and I have certain dependencies that I want in the class path, not the least of which is the Spring Boot starter for Spring Boot 3.5, right? That's my pom.xml right there in 4 lines of code. So the question then is, knowing what we know about how you can do this, why isn't pom.xml this concise, right? Why is it 500 lines of anything when it could just be 5 lines? So anyway, that's neither here nor there. All that to say though, here's my script, right? And so the magic is that you're using Dr. Dave Sire's little repo here, Spring Script. JBang will import, it's a macro. It'll basically copy and paste the code in that repo and put it in your code when it runs this, right? And so it sets up a new class called Spring Script. Normally, if you do Spring applications, Spring Boot applications, you get Spring application.run. Well, here we got Spring Script.run. See how that works? And notice that there's no import for that. It's assumed to be resident in the same source code unit, compilation unit as your script, okay? And from there, you can just do void main, or you can, it's optional, right? You can do string args if you want, right? This is a Java 25 thing, right? Args like that. You can do throws exception if you like. That's all optional, right? But the point is I'm just doing that. And then you can define standalone top level beans. There's no containing class. And you can define classes, at component, at service, at repository, at controller. Do whatever you want. Okay, so here we go. Where's my script? Desktop, scriptable Java. Okay. Copying, look at that. It reverted me back to the right version of Java, which is the current version of Java. Okay. So I'm going to take that test.java. I'll take it to my desktop here. Desktop. Okay. And we'll just do that. Oh, chmod ax. No, it's called script.java. Oh, that's why. Okay, here we get rid of that. Copy scriptable Java test. No, it's called script.java. Okay. Script.java. Okay, so it's so weird. Like, so now, what was the host and port? Localhost 8080. Did I, what was the name of the endpoint? Do we remember? It was called hi. So let's go to localhost 8080 hi. Okay. I mean, come on, that's awesome. And that's the thing you can do, right? Like in next month, it'll be GA and the entire stack. right? That's awesome. That's an embedded Spring Boot application that supports all the Spring infrastructure and all that stuff as a script, one source code file, right? Take that node, right? Like this is way better, way better, way faster too. And by the way, it compiles and there's a type system. Did I mention that? So this is good. So this is what we want, right? Okay, so that's Java 25, classless, implicit Java scripts. The only appropriate use of JavaScript is this. Yes, sir. You in the back with a hand.
Mention about,
Probably not.
the six doctor you mentioned, you have those scripts,
Dr. Dave Sire?
yeah, the spring script.
Yeah, oh, you want the repo?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Fair, good question. So you just this,
you know, they
Yeah.
scratch them.
right? You don't want me to, you don't want my source code too?
But I already saw you were,
I see how it is.
Josh Long.
Yeah, okay, fair. Yeah, you're right, you're right. But look, it's here, I put this on Josh Long Attic, right? Because they give away, you know, they give away repos. You can just create as many as you want. I've been trying to hit the upper limit on GitHub's generosity. Has not happened yet. So I've got, this is all the stuff that does not, you know, bring, what's that, Marie Kondo? Doesn't spark joy, right? Like these are all the repos that were nice for a minute and they're gone now. So there's, gosh, 650 repositories there, and you'll find a lot of them. So anyway, that's the scriptable Java one. You can get that there. Okay, so that's really good. Java 25, a heck of a release. Okay. Let me see. What else do we got here? We mentioned, okay, let's go back into, like, I wanted to talk about something that's already there. You talked about compact object headers, huge runtime optimization. How many of you have heard about or played with or used CDS? The new stuff, the app CDS stuff. Okay, again, CDS is a what is it? I don't know. Class data sharing. Thank you. It's a feature that was originally introduced in Java 11 in the distant past. They heavily upgraded it, and it's now been folded into the umbrella of like AOT --AOT. And there's, if you're interested in faster startup times for Java, this is a thing that's been there in for years. And then 2 releases ago, Spring Boot, I think. I don't know. I don't know. We just worked it out. So anyway, like 2 releases ago, maybe I'm not sure. The Spring team upgraded our story around that, right? We had pretty good support, but you can get dramatically improved startup time deterministically. You just do this thing, the exact same incantation, no matter what the source code, and you get dramatically improved startup time. So here's an example. 3.3. We're on 3.5. I think it's 2 plus. That'll be a year ago. That's, by the way, Spring comes out every 6 months, just like Java comes out every 6 months. And we have a Gantt chart. You know, we were so impressed by your chart that we went back in time. Spring.io Spring Boot, is it? Okay. So you go here and you can see there's a support thing, and you can see what version is supported. So the new version, which is not out yet, is 4.0. That's coming in November 20th or so. And then you can see you've got the green, that's the open source support. Yellow is the enterprise support, and so on. So you get it, right? Everybody on the same page. So you can always check for whatever project you're using. You can check what version is supported by what and by whom and when and how long and whatever. Okay. So CDS, I have an example here. I just wanted to show this to you because I believe it's one of those, if starting up your program as fast as possible is really one of those things that you need, then there's a way to do it. So service bin that run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this. I mean, here, let's look at the code, I guess. Subble dot this one. Okay. The code is not all that interesting. It's a boring public static void main application that logs its start and stop time, and it works in GraalVM, and it just, when the application is done starting, Spring emits an application ready event, which we listen for, and then we use it to capture the delta. And there's some HTTP endpoints, hello startup, and it returns a collection of dogs. And that's it. I've done some performance testing here with 3 different technologies: stock standard, regular Java, app CDS, Crack, and GraalVM. Right? So baseline, and then those other 3. And I'm not going to show you Crack because honestly, I wouldn't use it today. I mean, there's just It's too much. So how many of you know about Crack, Project Crack? This is a effort from the good folks over at Azul Systems. They built one of the, if not the fastest JVM on the market. Just they're brilliant, seriously, uncontested genius. But so they have this idea. Let's take advantage of a feature in Linux called CRYU, CRIU, Coordinated Restore in User Space. And the idea is that you take a photo of a Linux process, you take a photo of its memory, basically, when it's running, dump that to a file, and then feed that file into Linux directly next time, and the program just blips back into life exactly where it was when you took the photo. So you're not restarting the program, the program is just resuming. Yeah, you're just starting from where you were. It's not like, yeah, the memory is directly just, you know what I'm saying? It's not reinitializing all the data structures. It's already there. It just starts. So if you're expecting it to reinitialize things or run some initialization routines, whatever, that doesn't necessarily happen as you expect. And this is in theory, this is a Linux technology, so it doesn't work on Mac and Windows and whatever. But who cares? We're deploying to Linux, right? But it takes an actual photo, like it's everything in your JVM. So as a result, the good folks at Azul adapted it for the JVM by providing a very small jar that you can use that provides an interface called a resource, which provides lifecycle hooks. Basically, a method that gets called right before the photo is taken that allows you to null out any sensitive pointers like passwords or open connections or whatever. You can null all that stuff out so that it doesn't get written to disk, because that's a security vulnerability just waiting to happen otherwise, right? And then you have another lifecycle event that gets called right after the program is restored that allows you to reinitialize the stuff that you would have nulled out before, right? So it's in theory, if you're implementing all these different resource hooks, right? And Spring also adapts them to pre-destroy and post construct. We map them to the lifecycle hooks in Spring. But basically, if you do that for everything, then the system works. The problem comes when you forget just one thing with some sensitive password, right? Anywhere in the library, anywhere in the code base, anywhere in the system. If one thing leaks, then it's all pointless. See what I'm saying? That's why we're saying, look, the performance improvement is the best, but at what cost, right? It really is risky, I think. So I'm not going to show you that. And also I don't have the Azul JVM here, but you could use it. It is definitely the fastest of the options that are out there right now. Okay. If performance is all you really care about, you want to start up that Java program as fast as humanly possible or machinely possible, then that's the way to do it. Okay. Okay. So I've got bin run, and I've got this little script, and all it's going to do is it's going to go to the baseline and go to CDS and then build them. And then it's going to write out some stuff. Okay. So let's run that here. Bin run. Take some time here. I'll drink my water, coffee. This is why I build this into the demo, so I can drink. Oh, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. This is better. Okay, so it started the JVM on the baseline JVM and then stopped it, right? It stopped itself, basically. It took 0.9 seconds to run a JVM with Spring Data JDBC talking to a Postgres with a web server, okay? But then I used CDS, and it's 0.4 seconds, less than half. And that works on any JVM, on any platform, on any distro that supports app CDS will support this. And so how did I get this amazing effect? Well, go to go to bin, CDS, and then I've got this little script here, and you can see I have the jar, right? Here's the, I'm deleting the artifact directory. Then I've got, it assumes I've got a jar in the target directory, and I'm doing Java-jar mode tools, pointing it to the jar, and then I'm saying extract, okay? Then I say Java, Spring AOT enabled is true, Spring context exit on refresh, and then this is Java commands, Java xx archive classes at exit equals this .jsa file, and then I point it to this jar program, and so it's going to run it with those switches in place that'll allow the program to start up, and then the CDS stuff takes a photo of the JVM's data structures, right? So it's not a process operating system level photo, it's a JVM photo of just the JVM's internals. And then it writes it out to that file called application.jsa, and then finally we restart it with dash d Spring AOT enabled is true, pointing it not to the jar, but to the application.jsa and then the jar. It needs this for, I don't know, keys or whatever, but all the important stuff is in that JSA. And then we write it out. So you can do that. It doesn't, I don't have to know about what the program does. You can run these same 3 commands on every single Java program and probably have or better your startup time today or yesterday, last year, 2 years ago. That's free. Just do it. Just upgrade, or better yet, don't just use this. I mean, you should upgrade, but even if you don't, this has already been there for years and people are looking at me like it's magic. No, this is already here. You can already get double the performance gain for startups. So that's good. I'm a big fan of that. Let's see. CDS. Okay, so let's talk about some of the new stuff because you mentioned virtual threads, right? You're right. Java 20. So virtual threads are a feature introduced in Java 21. As you so eloquently explained, there were some issues. There were some issues in Java 21. The Java 21 version. I mean, who knows? Who's tried virtual threads? Okay, let me do a very quick example here. Okay, so again, we're going to go back to my second favorite place on the internet. My first favorite place, obviously, is production. This is my second favorite place. It's awesome. It's just great. Let's start that Spring.io. I'm going to build a new application here. And again, you have choices that you have to make down here, friends. There are 3 radio boxes from which you can select 3 radio boxes, but obviously only one valid choice. You see, we keep these other radio boxes here to see who makes terrible life decisions. You should never select these ever in any context whatsoever. This is how we know you can't be trusted with important decisions. So we have Java 24. That's the only valid version of Java to be using today. It is, after all, the current version of Java. And since there is no cost to upgrade, 0 cost, right? There's no cost to upgrade, and it's almost always guaranteed to work. Remember, ask any AI model. Just try it right now. Go ask any AI model of the modern programming languages, which language has the best backwards compatibility story. Invariably, it'll be Java across all the AI models. Java has an incredible backwards compatibility story, right? It really does. It's an amazingly good story. And the other thing to consider is that it's software malpractice to not be upgrading, right? If you upgrade, there is a potential for risk, right? If you upgrade your software, there's a potential for issues when you upgrade. If you don't upgrade, there's a guarantee of issues in your software. Rot is a real thing. You cannot keep a piece of software in stasis. Something will get upgraded beyond its ability to cope, right? So the only responsible way to move forward is to keep upgrading your software. That's just all there is. It's either maybe a problem or a guaranteed one. The choice is obvious, clear. Don't ever leave your software unpatched and old and out of date. So I'm going to be using Java 24 because again, I care about software, right? So I'm going to use that, and we're just going to bring in the web support here. Open that up, UAO. Okay. And like you just said, I mean, Java 25 is awesome, right? You've got so many great features. Java 25 is awesome. I'm using Java 24. It's not the GA version yet, but I mean, just think of it as technically superior in every way, right? Technically superior in every way compared to Java's 21 and 17, and certainly Java 8, right? Technically superior. It's also morally superior, okay? You won't like the look of sadness and shame in your children's eyes when they see that you're using Java 8 in production. Don't do this. Don't do this. Be the change you want to see in the world. Do the right thing. Use at the very least Java 24 or later. And just also mathematically. Remember, Java 24 is 3 times greater than Java 8. That's just simple math. Okay? 3 times. It's an amazing release. And Java 25, when it comes here, that'll be even more than 3 times greater. Okay, so Java application. So here's a very simple example using virtual threads. Okay, class. I'm borrowing a demo from my colleague. Her name is Cora E. Berglade. She's smarter than I am, so I borrow her demos with permission, of course. I mean, she's brilliant. When you can find her on the internet, she's so smart. And I constantly asking her for help. See, she wouldn't have made this mistake. She would have remembered the web stuff. That was so awkward. Okay, so controller at response body. This is her demo, and it's just pretty brilliant. So we're going to use have you heard of HTTP bin? HTTP bin is a website you can use to test HTTP clients, yeah? And so here I'm making a call. You can't see it because the Zoom thing is blocking it, but I made a call to httpbin.org/delay/5, which once you invoke it will block for 5 seconds. It's delaying for 5 seconds before it produces an HTTP response, yeah? Okay, so I'm going to call that endpoint from my Spring MVC controller. Now remember, I'm using Spring MVC. Spring MVC in turn runs inside of Tomcat. Tomcat is a servlet container, and by default, it's one thread per request. So you make the request, Tomcat creates a thread, the server socket accepts the request, it delegates a thread to handle the processing of that request, which in turn wakes up the servlet assigned to that path, which in turn is the Spring MVC dispatcher servlet, which in turn wakes up this controller, and then calls your method. And in that method, you can do whatever the heck you want, but you got to produce a response, right? And in this case, I'm going to produce a response only after I've made this network call to this other thing that's going to take 5 seconds. So what's going to happen to that thread? Nobody else can use it, right? We call that blocking the thread. Super bad for scalability and greedy too. So it's remember, threads are your only way. It's the only vehicle you have to access the CPU. So anytime you spend on the thread doing anything but using the CPU is a waste of that thread, right? It's software malpractice. So how do I get around that? Well, I can do reactive programming. I love reactive programming. I wrote a book called Reactive Spring. I'm a big fan. That said, I get it. It's not everybody's cup of Java, right? It's a different paradigm. If you've done functional programming, reactive programming will feel very natural. If you're coming from Java, it feels like, you know, you're completely in a different world. I get it. So instead, we're going to use virtual threads, right? This is the feature that's in Java 21 and later. And I'm just going to use the Spring Framework REST client here, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a second here. And I'm going to say this.http.get.uri, okay, HTTP. I'm going to use, let me see, desktop talk, come on, talk bin. Oh my goodness. Okay, here we go. HTTP bin. So that's going to run a Docker image on port 80. Okay, let's open that. Okay, so let's confirm localhost 80 delay 5. Same magic trick. Right? It's going to block for 5 seconds, but now I'm not denial of servicing the actual website. Okay. Okay, so we're going to call that. I'm going to say HTTP localhost 80 delay 5 body string.class. Okay. And finally, we need to do something. I'm gonna do something here because I have an amazing machine. My computer is amazing, actually amazing. This thing is crazy. It's a MacBook Pro Max, right, with all the toppings, mushrooms and anchovies. It's an amazing laptop. This thing's amazing. I can run Slack and Chrome, both at the same time, right? It's garbage software, those things, just absolute monsters. Gigs of RAM, each one of them. I would never use it on purpose, but I can, right? There are videos of scientists trying to do this on these laptops years ago. They just exploded. But now you can. The science has gone so far. So it's an amazing computer. And all that to say, it's not really representative of what you're dealing with in production, is it? Right? When you go to the cloud, you have these commodity Linux machines that are from yesteryear, and you're scaling out. But this thing is both out and up. This is a beast. And to be fair, any computer in the last 10 years is going to be a freaking amazing piece of hardware compared to what you get in the commodity cloud, right? So it's not really fair to do benchmarking or anything like that on this machine because it's just heads and tails way better than anything you're going to get in production. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to constrain my my thread capacity here. I'm going to say threads, Tomcat threads is going to be just 10. Okay, I'm going to limit the number of threads that Tomcat has at its disposal. So it's like having a fraction of a virtual CPU or something like that. Very, very small. Okay. Okay, so let's now try that. And I haven't used virtual thread. This is just using stock standard old and busted threads from yesteryear. Okay, here we go. And now I do, hey, this is a load testing like Apache Bench. I'll make 40 requests with as many as 10 at the same time. Remember, I've only got 10 threads and they're all, they're all going to launch at the same time. And somebody's going to have to wait in turn because I don't have 20 threads. If I had 20 threads and I'm making 20 concurrent calls, then each one would be able to ride the thread and get a result at the same time, but they're not. They're going to be queued. So at the very least, some of them are going to wait 10 seconds, right? Okay. Oops. 404. No. So dumb. Okay, here we go. More wait time for the coffee. Oh, that's good. Not good, actually. I mean, have you tried the coffee in the city? It's a phenomenal. Phenomenal. Why did I order this? There was I'm going to, right after Spring 1, I'm going to Java's 1. no, Java Zone. It's in Oslo, in Norway. And when I first started going to Oslo in 2010, they didn't have Starbucks there. I used to tell people that I like Starbucks not because it's particularly great, but because it's consistent, it's ubiquitous, like the cloud. You get the same machine every time, right? It's very, very scalable that way. But then I went to Norway, and it's like Norway is, you know, that's a very, very modern place, except they didn't have Starbucks up until like in the last decade and a half or so. Okay, what am I doing? So what do we get here, huh? There's that summary, 20 seconds for all 40 requests, okay? And not good. This is, going to call this, we're going to say that's not good. So yuck. Now, we're going to refactor to use virtual threads. And look, it's not going to be easy, but I believe that if we put our heads together and we really focus, that we can get this done pretty quickly. Okay, it's done. So I'm going to restart now. And here we go. And redo that same exact requests. Okay, more coffee for Josh. Oh, it's so consistent. Okay, so here we go. So there we go, virtual threads, right? So double half the time to get the same number of requests processed. And the reason is because as soon as that runtime detected that we're blocking making a network call to another socket on httpbin.org, or in my case, localhost 80, as soon as that request was initiated, the runtime said, hey, you're wasting thread time. I'm going to park you over here. I'll put you in RAM, and I'll let somebody else use this thread, right? So there's a disconnect now between actual thread and runtime thread. And that happens transparently. It just moves you off, and you can actually see it in action, right? Like if I were smart, again, this is not something that this is not a mistake that Cora would have made, but I did. So let me try again. So if I had done this, okay, and then var response, and then message is equal to thread dot current thread, turn response, and then I'll just print out message, okay? So, okay, here we go. We'll wait 5 seconds. Sorry about this, but I'm not sorry, actually. Oh. Okay, so go back to the console here. You can see that I took note of the thread of execution for a single request, starting before I made the blocking 5 second long call, and then after I was done making the call. And that's noted here. You can see I started in virtual thread 108, but then I finished, right? 108, I finished on virtual thread 108, but the actual underlying thread pool, here it says 1 worker 13. Over here it says 1 worker 9. So behind the scenes, without me doing a thing, I got moved from one thread to another in the same call stack, in the same method, right? That's cool. That is so cool. And you mentioned the scope values, right? That stuff, this is the magic, right? And he mentioned, he said there's an issue, right? Java 21 will pin, if you are doing something, and again, I don't know who does this. It's not I mean, I'm sure you didn't do it. Most people didn't do this, right? But if you did like this, if you did, let's say I have private final object monitor equals, did you know you can instantiate object? I don't know if people knew that. Monitor. Like if I do that, so here I'm doing a synchronization. I've got a semaphore. And the whole point of the semaphore is to stop reentrance in that block while somebody else is in that zone, in that region, right? And so if I'm holding a lock, that lock before Java 24 was held by the underlying operating system thread, right? There's some gnarly C++ code that they couldn't untangle in time for Java 21. So they created the virtual threads. Virtual threads are lightweight, cheap Java objects that get mounted onto operating system threads, right? That's why the underlying thread pool here showed me 1 versus 9, and then 1 versus 1 dash or whatever, 118 and 19, right? That underlying thread is the real thread. But behind the scenes, there's actually 2 different virtual threads, right? In between frames there. And so that wouldn't work if the lock was held by something. Especially if it was held by the by the operating system thread. So the C++ semaphore was held by the operating system thread, which meant that virtual threads could enter the same zone as much as they wanted. So in order to make this like sensible, the Java team made it so that if you do this, if you do synchronization while doing something that would otherwise activate virtual threads, it'll just disallow it. It won't use virtual threads. So it's not like it's not like a limitation of the feature. It's just that the feature just wasn't there yet for that particular case, right? So what they did for Java 24, and this is the old version, this is the version I'm using right now, so it's already fixed, which is why what he said earlier is 100% true. There's no reason not to use it now. What they did was they made it so that now the lock is held by the virtual thread, not by the C++ thread, right? Not by the operating system thread. So now, if you enter a zone with a synchronization happening, and that in turn results in a blocking call, which activates the virtual thread stuff, it's fine. Still works. There's one more place, that's called thread pinning, right? There's only one more place where that thread pinning happens. Who can anybody here guess? No, I mean thread sleep and blocking IO are the two things that activate virtual threads, but there's one more place where it degrades in this way. It's for native code, and I don't think they're ever going to fix that, right? They can't know what pointers to what threads you're handling in JNI. So if you view JNI in a synchronized in a place that might use virtual threads, it's going to just linearize it on the same thread. Whatever, it's fine. I mean, how many of you are writing your own JNI code? That's what I would laugh and that's what I would say, and we'd all laugh and agree and move on if class.forName didn't exist, which does use JNI. So if you're doing class.forName, which is like most reflection starts with a call to class.forName, right? If you're doing that, if you're doing reflection, that could end up causing pinning. So just be aware of that. I mean, most places in the framework, they're not going to be an issue, but if you start doing that kind of stuff, you might end up defeating your virtual threads, okay? So native code, there's some stuff in the JDK that in turn calls native code for which this is still an issue. But by and large, he's 100% right. You can use virtual threads with impunity almost everywhere, right? And even this, why would somebody write this code? Why would you synchronize and then call a network service? You're not going to synchronize the web server, right? Why would you keep a lock while you waited 5 seconds for something? There's no point, right? Normally you could avoid even this, even in Java 21, you could avoid this just by doing the IO before the lock. That works, right? That's actually more sensible anyway. And now you avoid the virtual. I mean, you know, who cares if this zone doesn't have virtual threads? It's going to execute instantaneously anyway, right? It's the blocking IO that's the problem. So anyway, virtual threads are awesome, and it's easy to move to in Java 21, and then even easier in Java 24. Definitely do it. Okay, so there's that. Here we go. Now let's talk about some stuff in the new versions of Spring, and we'll just go through. I've got a little smorgasbord of demos, because remember, Spring Framework 7 and Spring Framework 4 come out in November this year, right? And it's been a long time coming. Remember you remember Spring Framework 6 came out in 22. Is that true? That feels like it's true. Or was it 23?
23, I think.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Well, whatever. We just work there. So anyway, it's Spring Framework, and then the last generation came out a few years ago. Huh? See, I hedged my bets. I don't know. And it's been a good release, but that was a particularly bumpy release because it coincided with our move to 6-month releases. It coincided with Java 17 was still very much in vogue at the time. It coincided with the move from Java EE to Jakarta EE, which broke every bit of code ever written by anybody in the history of the Java ecosystem for no reason, certainly not a technical one. And so that, there's all this like tumult. Yeah. And so one of the key things about the new release is that it should just be buttery smooth. We are actively avoiding anything that could be a pain. We're going to deprecate the things that have been deprecated. We're going to, there's some of that, of course. But one of the things I love about this new release is that I've had no issues upgrading. And there are still some really nice features that you can take advantage of. So let's go through that here. I'm going to build some applications, starting with the thing that I care about the least, which is JMS client. Okay. So I care about it because it's useful for somebody, but it's not for me. Who's using JMS? Java Message Service. Okay, good. Stop. Right? So of all the ways to integrate one producer and a consumer, this is the worst. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Without knowing.
Are you using a messaging system from the distant past? Nope, that's a different protocol, AMQP. RabbitMQ is awesome. Kafka is awesome. Kestrel is awesome. Pulsar is awesome. There's so many better ways. Yeah. Anything. Yeah. So JMS, I get it. Okay, I have a copy of Dave Chappell, not Chappelle, that's the comedian. Dave Chappell was he wrote the O'Reilly JMS book, the book from like 1999, right? And I have a copy of that signed from him, right? I'm a big fan of messaging and integration. I've been a big fan of messaging integration for decades. And so JMS at first blush seemed like a nice idea. It's a way to do messaging and integration in the JVM platform. It provides a standardized set of interfaces to describe a producer and a consumer. Okay, and one deposits a message object into a destination, the other one consumes it. Seems reasonable enough. The problem is that first of all, it's a Java library, not a spec, and so as a result, both sides need to have the same version of the Java library. It's like a driver. Well, if both sides need to, like, if I have to be on Java version Java driver version 1.56, and you have to be on Java driver version 1.56, that's not very decoupled, is it? And if I upgrade the broker, then we both have to shut down, right? So that's the coupling I'm trying to avoid by moving to messaging in the first place. Second of all, there's just one destination. You have a producer that sends a thing to a destination, and the consumer consumes from the same destination. Well, again, I'm now coupled. We both have to agree on the same place. All messaging systems today have the ability to do some routing, some indirection between producer and consumer. I send it over here to a mailbox, and then it gets routed internally in the broker, and then gets consumed over there in a different place. But here it's the same. You're coupled. If you ever write code that consumes producer and consumer, that unless you are willing to refactor and then notify the other side, which is a coupling you don't want, then you're stuck, right? So it's just it's the least useful way to do integration, right? And it exists, I think, as a way for the vendors of the 1990s to do to rubber stamp terrible lowest common denominator approaches to messaging. Okay, and it hasn't evolved accordingly. So I don't use JMS. But if you're going to use JMS, maybe you want a new DSL with which to do it. We have the JMS template, like the JDBC template and the REST template and so many others like that, were the sort of gateway drug for Spring in the very early incarnations of it, right? That's certainly how I got into Spring, was these convenient libraries in effect, right? Of late, we started to move to the REST client, right? We got the JDBC client, you got the web client, you've got all these client DSLs, and these are fluid DSLs. These are fluid DSLs that you can use to build up with as much or little granularity and precision as you want to talk to these underlying sort of things. And we decided to give the JMS template that JMS client treatment. Okay, so let's take a look at that here. Start.spring.io, JMS. Okay, and I'll use Docker Compose. I'll use ActiveMQ. I'll use I should actually have everything I need. No, that's JMS. Okay, and I'm going to use, very importantly here, I'll use Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4. Hit enter. CD downloads. Okay. All right, we're not going to spend too much. I'm using Docker Compose because when you use Spring Boot and you choose Docker Compose and you choose some infrastructure, a lot of times it'll generate a Docker Compose file for you. In this case, it generates this handy ActiveMQ Docker Compose file for me. It can do the same for Redis and RabbitMQ and MongoDB and whatever. So even if, and for our purposes, since it's going to automatically start that container up for us, that's convenient as well. Okay, so I'm going to do a JMS configuration thing here. We're going to have an application runner that's going to, when it starts up, it's going to produce a message into a destination, and then I'll have a JMS listener, a Spring Framework JMS listener, that'll consume it. Now, what is the name of the destination? Well, let's call it QName, and I'll call it Portland. What is the jug name? Is it like PDX? What is a PJug? Oh, that seems like it's gonna be fine. Okay, Q. Did I static final? Q. Nope. Okay. Ha. Okay, void on string message. What is the issue with this? Oh, destination. Okay, it's my fault. System out, receive this message. Okay, so this is not new. This is the old thing. This has been here for a decade, more than a decade, right? Fine. And there's also Kafka listener and Rabbit listener and all these other associated annotations. Fine. And then here, I'm going to use the JMS client. Okay, JMS client. And I'll say JMS client dot destination Q, and I'll say send, and I can send a message like so. I can, build it up and so on. Let's just see if that works. Who knows? So it's starting up the Docker image for me. There you go. Received hello world. Okay, check. We're done. Moving on. It's JMS. I don't know why that thing still exists. Go away. Stop. You won't even die gracefully. Go away. Okay, let's see. Okay, next. Oh, API versioning. New feature in Spring Framework 7. I'm a big fan. API versions. Add the web support here. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Go here. Open this. UAO. All right. Who's torrenting? Versions. Web. 4. Okay. So versions.zip. So this is a new feature in Spring Framework 7. Super useful. Look, if you've done everything right, you should never have this issue. But come on, it's going to happen where you have to maintain a incompatible version of an API for older consumers while moving the code base forward to the new version. So we now have explicit built-in support for that in the framework. It's a really nice quality of life improvement that I'm sure some of you will have use for. In a sufficiently large code base, it's sort of impossible to, come on. Has it ever been the case in your work that you've got old code? Okay. Yeah, come on. Greetings, controller, get mapping, hello, okay? I'll just do hello world, okay? Actually, static final string message is hello world. Message. Good. So there's my controller at response body. Let's just see if that's working. I mean, that should, right? That's as simple as it gets. What happened? Yeah, it's fine. So HTTP curl, whatever, HTTP localhost 8080, and what was the controller named? It was called hello. So here we are. Good. That's fine, right? It's the alpha version. Okay. No, it's the first. That means the first version, right? So okay. Moving on. But let's say we've evolved. The spec has changed. So now suddenly I need to like support the old one, but we've got this need to now return a JSON response with a payload or something like that. Okay. So now I go here. I call this v1, and now I go over here, get mapping hello map of string hello v2, or just call it hello. This is what everybody else will get later on. Return map.of message, return that. Now I want to say this is version 1.0. It's a new attribute there. Okay. So everybody else will get this, but those who are asking for version 1.0 will get that. And how do you stipulate what the default version is? That's a good question. I'm not sure if I can remember. Let me see. I think it's WebMVC configure. Don't quote me. Let's try it. So we'll say class versions implements WebMVC configure. Okay, and then you've got implement methods. Aha! I'm going to Vegas next week. I'm going to gamble. Let's see. Got this. Got that. And configure dot set version required is false. Don't have to specify for every single one. You can specify a API version parser, which has to take a given string and return a comparable, but you don't have to. Obviously, there's a default implementation. There's that. And then set default version will be 2.0. And I think that's it. Use a request param or use header, right? So X API version. Okay. That seems like it'd be enough. Let's try that. Version configuration, something like this. What's wrong with this? Okay, so now take that one still returns that returns 400 because I want. Why is that return to 400?
You haven't specified 2.0 anywhere?
Yeah. What he said. Wait, so version is 2.0. Let's try that. Oh, did I just overwrite my code? It's still there, right? It's all good. I cancels it just in time. Okay. There's the new one. Okay. But I want the old one. HX API version 1.0. Got the old one. Huh? Nice. And it's a strategy. So you can use request parameters, cookies, headers, whatever you want. Okay. And there's also a Spring Cloud Gateway filter that'll take advantage of this as well now. Right. So yes, sir. Right. You can do request parameter or you can do path variables or whatever. It's all pluggable. Yeah, I think you could maybe if I remove the version from that one, is that the trick? So
The default would have been V1 here. That way you don't have to update any plugin.
yeah,
Yeah, if you're talking about the basis that you're gonna have to be, it's gonna be complicated. You have to specify specifically with every transmission.
let's see.
This is definitely useful, but.
I mean, hopefully you'd start deprecating all of them.
Well, again, that's why I mentioned Spring Cloud Gateway, which will have a filter for that. So yes, but yeah, you would, I guess the default, so if I do default version is 1.0 and then do 2.0, well, actually I don't do a version at all, what happens? Yeah, okay, that works. So if I don't specify anything and I set default version is 1.0, then I get the 1.0 compatible API. So the old ones don't have to change at all. And then for 2.0 and later, they can start specifying the version. And now that you've done it, and if you're going to start your projects today, start incorporating versions into it. Okay, that was nice. It's a small, it's not actually, it's Spring Cloud Gateway, Spring MVC, Spring Webflex, all this stuff has been updated accordingly, but it's nice. Okay, moving on. Let's see, API version, just specify, this, there's not really a code demo. You've talked about it, right? Like,
I've talked about it here, but yeah.
just the important bits is that Java is far and away a very modern language these days. But that said, one of the things I miss from Kotlin is nullability support, right? And so do a lot of people. And there's been actually a number of sort of false starts at trying to sort of build a de facto standard on this, and even one false start at an actual standard, and it didn't sort of happen until finally recently. So this is JSpecify. It's a set of standardized annotations that describe nullability, right? Like as a part of the code base, and the idea here is that you could decorate your code base with these annotations to say when a thing is allowed to be null and when it's not, and that's nice, but it doesn't mean a lick of good unless that validation and that feedback is pervasive. So in Spring Boot 4 and Spring Framework 7, we've modernized all the code bases. We're still working on it, but the plan is all the big Spring Data, Spring Framework, Spring Boot, Spring Batch, Spring Integration, they should all be nullable, JSpecify aware. And we work in conjunction with a number of other people on this effort. It's including the build tools, Maven, Gradle, including IntelliJ, JetBrains, the whole team working on the IDE experience, including lots of people from Google and all these other places as well, right? There's a whole bunch of different industry players that want this effort finally. And so now the idea is that you write code in your IDE, and your IDE will surface the validation that you get from these JSpecify annotations as compiler errors, basically. You try and pass a null reference to a non-nullable thing, and it'll bark at you in the IDE. Then you try and compile it and run it using Spring Boot, and the compiler plugin will bark at you when you try and do that. So it's like the compiler was doing its job, but it's not the compiler. It's better, but it is using actually a compiler SPI. Apparently, that's the other thing is so nice about that. Okay, so JSpecify. That's I mean, if you're not doing weird things with null, then this should be like a not like a nothing burger, right? Shouldn't have many issues. One thing that was kind of nice about this is that it actually helped us identify bugs in Spring Security. Spring Security is almost as old as Spring Framework, right? And it's we've had a lot of different leadership in that project. We had Ben Alex from the very beginning, and then Luke Taylor, and then Rob Winch. So that's not a lot of leadership. It's just 3 people. Never mind. I take it back. I stand corrected. That was a mistake. What I'm saying is there've been 3 people over almost 2 decades who have led this project, and these, there's things that were added on that assume different semantics that maybe weren't clear. So at one point we had this concept of in Spring Security when it first came out, we baked in the concept of a password into the framework, right? Well, nowadays you wouldn't, passwords are terrible, right? You have lots of reasons not to use passwords. And so as we started to add support for these other authentication mechanisms, it became acceptable for the authentication to have, or for the user rather, to have a null password that was semantically valid. But then in other places where that first original raft of code existed, they assumed a non-null password. So we now didn't even have clarity within our own code base around whether this is semantically allowed to be null or not. And adding these annotations helped us find and then fix these kind of inconsistencies. So it's a good effort, and hopefully, you're not writing the kind of code that'll bark when you use these annotations anyway. Okay, moving on. Declarative HTTP clients. Okay, so we had a feature again in Spring Framework 2.0, sorry, 6.0 and Spring Framework, Spring Boot 3.0 from 20 whatever. We talked about that earlier, and we arrived at the conclusion that we don't remember. But so here we go. Let's add this. Here we go. This one. So let's see. It's a catfact.ninja API. No, fact. There. Okay. I'm going to build a HTTP client for this random open API. Okay. It's called catfact.ninja/fact. Okay. So how do I do that? If I go here, here we go. You can do this the old fashioned way. So I could say cat fact ninja client record, and then the record is fact and length, right? So cat fact string fact int length, right? Here we go, add component. And I can use the old Spring Framework REST client. Love the REST client. How many of you using the REST client, by the way? That's awkward. What about the REST template? Everywhere, yeah. And even the REST client in turn uses the REST template, right? Behind the scenes, the default one. So well, it's using the REST operations, right? Look, you can even see the annotations from JSpecify at nullable. Right there. Check for null. Can't, whatever. Okay. So anyhoozleby, go over here and we'll say cat fact. Okay. Return this.http.get.uri, and then it's HTTPS cat fact ninja fact. Okay. And I'm going to return the cat fact. Okay. And then we're going to just take advantage of that client there. We'll say application runner cat fact ninja return. Okay, good. And one of the nice things in Java 25 is finally you can just do underscore for that. Okay, or that's Java 24, but also there you go. The term pus is the root of the principal word for cat in the Romanian term pisica, and the root of the secondary word in Lithuanian puz, and Low German pus. Some scholars suggest that pus could be imitative of the hissing sound used to get a cat's attention. As a slang word, nope. Yeah. Cats sleep 16 hours, 16 to 18 hours per day. When cats are asleep, they are still alert to incoming stimuli. If you poke the tail of a sleeping cat, it will respond accordingly. Okay, so whatever, right? We've got a client, and this is fine. Look, it's not all that bad. But and this one was a pretty agreeable. There's no API tokens, no encoders that I need to specify or you know, finagle into working and whatever. It's just whatever. It's fine. But imagine you scale this effort out and you've got like 100 different endpoints and all that. So wouldn't it be nice if I could have some conventions and just start building up these clients? Okay, well, in Spring Framework 6, we added the ability to do borrowing, in fact, from what we had in Spring Cloud, OpenFane, thank you, and Spring Cloud Square retrofit. And I even started a project that was a experimental Spring project called Spring Retro Socket, which is basically declarative interface clients for our socket, right? All three of those are dead ends at this point, right? And the reason is because we built that support into Framework itself. And so we have a core abstraction for building clients based on this technology. So let me comment this out. Okay, and so cat fact, okay. Cat fact, okay. And here, I'm gonna annotate this now. Git exchange, and this is HTTPS cat fact dot ninja fact, okay. And I'll just use this here. And this is where it gets weird. So you'd have to create a cat fact client, ninja client, okay. In order for that to work, I have to inject the builder, and then what am I? Oh, I'm gonna build it up. Oh yeah, you have to do this. That's right. So, okay, come on. HTTP service proxy factory dot builder dot build. Okay, and then to build it, you need a exchange adapter. So I'm going to use the REST client here. So I'll say var REST client exchange adapter, REST client exchange, REST client what is this? It's a, what is this type here? HTTP exchange adapter. So HTTP exchange adapter dot REST client adapter. There we go. Dot create dot build. Okay, so I'm injecting the REST client, creating a REST client adapter, passing that in there, and then I get the, I build it, and then I use that to build out the client. I say create client with that interface. This doesn't feel. This is not. It works, okay, but it's like so. Okay, I mean, here, try it out. Let's just see what it. Okay, so there you go. You've got like cat fact, okay, and it's fine. It worked, but this doesn't feel very productive. I have to do all this, and again, to be fair, amortized over multiple instantiations. Normally, what you do is you'd create this bean right here as a secondary bean, and then for every new interface, you just inject the HTTP service proxy factory as it's been pre-configured with the default headers and the REST client and all that, and then just use it to spin up the new client. But that's still a whole new bean definition for every single one of them, right? So it gets tedious. So it works, but it's tedious, okay? And there we go. So Spring Framework 7, we finally fixed it. So the easiest way you can get this to work is to do import HTTP import. Did I forget to add Spring Framework? I did. I blame myself. Okay, let's see. 4.0. What did I call this, by the way? HTTP clients. Okay. Command Shift I. Okay. Yeah, okay, we're gonna do this. Here we go. At import HTTP Did it not import? Did I have the right version? Yeah. Okay, reload. Import HTTP services. Haha. There you go. So now I can say interface. No, what is it? It is value equals CatFact Ninja. So you can do an array, right? Let's try that for now, just to see. There you go. The cat appears to be the only domestic animal companion not mentioned in the Bible. Okay, so that is a lot simpler, right? I don't have to do all this stuff. I just define the interface and then point it to that. But again, this is optimized for scale. So like if you have hundreds of different clients that need to talk to different APIs, there's even this concept of a group, right? So I can say cats, and then I can provide a bunch of that, and I can actually have what is it? There's a configurer that you can use that you can then say for this group, use this REST client, and then that REST client can have default headers and tokens and authorization and whatever. So it can scale up to a lot better scale. Okay, so that's the API client story. This is finally nice, really nice, you know. But as you can see, you don't need the groups. You don't need to do anything special to get a usable value there. Okay. Okay. Now, finally, my friend the bean registrar. This is my favorite feature. Don't ask. I mean, you should ask, but I don't know. I don't know why. Okay, I'll tell you why I like it though, but I'm not sure why it's my favorite. Start that Spring.io. Bueller. Maybe it's. I think it's Safari. Like I don't know what's going on. Sometimes I wonder if that cloud relay stuff gets in the way. Okay, sorry. It is Slack. It's. I don't. I'm not even running it. Why? Okay, so okay, let's just get rid of that. I'm gonna use Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4, and we're gonna say beans, okay? And I've got nothing on the class path here. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, one of the things that I should have showed you a second ago, is it too late? Can I go back and fix it? It's too late. Here, it's not too late. I fixed it. Okay, so look at this. Spring Boot 4 and Spring Boot 4 has been modularized, right? And so right now, if you look at Spring Boot 3x and 2x and 1.x, there's a single jar called Spring Boot Auto Configure that has, what is it, thousands at this point, classes of Java code, right? And if you add a Spring Boot starter for the web support, for the data, for JPA, for whatever, those starter jars, Spring Boot starter data JPA, have no code in them. All they do is transitively via Maven or Gradle bring in other jars, which in turn have code in them, right? But there's no code in those jars themselves. They serve only to bring in dependencies so that that auto configuration will see those dependencies. It'll see that certain types are present in the class path, and it'll activate certain functionality. That's the whole conditional mechanism, right? So if you've seen like a server auto configuration, something like this, you can see this is the Java config class for Tomcat or something. Yeah, Tomcat web server auto configuration. And we have these conditions that say create this Spring Bean, but only create it if this bean of type server web factory is not there, right? And a lot of times we have in different places, we have a conditional on class. So this conditional on class lives on the auto configuration, which is just a Java config class. It lives on the class and it says create the auto configuration if and only if these types are not in the class path. Or sorry, if they are in the class path. So if they're not in the class path, then this Java configuration class won't ever be created. Spring won't discover it and it won't create it. The benefit is that you get this dynamic behavior, right? You add Spring Boot Starter Web, that in turn brings in transitively these types, which means that this condition now evaluates to true, which means that that configuration class gets executed when you start up the program, right? But all the auto configuration lives in a monolithic single Spring Boot auto configure jar. So every possible permutation of every possible configuration of every condition is in one giant jar. And so when you write a program, even if you're just using one starter, you're still bringing in this ginormous jar, right? You may not be using 99% of that code. You might only be activating 1 or 2 autoconfigs, but every other class that might get scanned and then ignored because it doesn't ring true, doesn't evaluate to true, is still there. And that's just a burden on the JVM. The JVM itself has to literally read those bytes from class files from the disk into memory, parse them, only for Spring Boot to come along and say, nah, don't need it. ignore, right? So now what we've done is we've broken up that monolith. Spring Boot 4 has the auto config corresponds to the starters. So now if you bring in Spring Boot Starter Web, you get only the stuff that's required for the web support in Spring Boot, right? Everything else you don't have. So it's just, you should see not a huge, but a perceptible benefit of runtime memory and startup time, right? Whatever, 5%, 10%, something like that. Not a big deal. I can't give you exact numbers. Benchmark for yourself, okay? So that's nice. And one of the nice things about that refactoring, of course, is that, you know, like, historically, if you wanted to do something with Spring and you wanted to build a web server, what do you bring in? You bring in Spring Boot Starter Web. If you wanted to build a web client that talks to the REST using the REST client or the declarative clients, you also bring in Spring Boot Starter Web, and then you have to set a property to tell Spring not to start up a web server because all you're trying to do is build a client. Well, now we have this. We have REST client. All right, small stuff like that. Finally, so now if all I want to do is act as a client to a web service, just bring in this new starter, and you won't get a web server, which is great. Like if I'm in a batch app, I might need to call a web server. If I'm in a Spring integration app, whatever, there's lots of domains that have nothing to do with the web or being a web server, right? So this is great. Okay, so anyway, go back to Bean registrars here. So I've got this. Rail VM, that's the only thing I need, I think. Beans, hit enter. Open this up. Okay, so we have a new configuration model, new component model in Spring Framework 7 called Bean registrar. Now, again, are most of us going to use this? I don't know, probably not. Probably, I mean, it's not like you're, again, you've already got options. It's just that they were sort of weird. So I'll show you what I mean. Like, let's suppose I want to register a cart object, right? How do I do that? Well, I can tell Spring I've got this object by annotating it, right? So it looks in the current package and below, and it finds any bean that has a component on it, and it registers the bean, right? Okay, fine. The other way I could do it is I could create a Java configuration. I could say class cart configuration at configuration, and then Spring Boot, you know, will have there's behind the scenes, you can't see it, but there's this thing called component scan, and this is duplicative. I don't need to do this, but if I didn't have this, I would need to do that, right? And what that says is, hey, look in the current package and find everything beneath it. It'll find these configurations, and that configuration class, in turn, I could define a cart like that, right? Return new cart, blah. Okay, and then in which case I don't need this, right? So I can register the cart via component scanning or via this Java configuration mechanism. Fine. What if I want to register like what if I want shopping carts that are locale aware? You know, what if they know about the current locale? Okay. What if I have a bunch of different locales and I need to support different settings for each location, each language or whatever. So imagine I've got like a locale, and I want to, you know, I want to make the thing aware of that. Okay. So now let's just override toString. Okay. Return that. So now how do I register, you know, different carts for different locales? Well, I could do it manually. I guess I could do like you know, locale aware cart and then pass in, right? I could do that, and I could say return new whatever. I don't know, whatever US, right? I could do that, and I could just keep going. But I wanted to do, if I wanted to do it, there's hundreds of these, right? There's lots of locales. I don't want to do this myself. What if I wanted to dynamically register? Oh, I can't even plug it in. What if I wanted to dynamically register beans based on locales? Well, I have some options. I can go very low in the Spring Framework primordial soup, you know, at the level of the bean factory post processor. And there I can work with something called a bean definition. And there I can dynamically create these meta model objects that get registered and turned into Spring Beans. And it's very sort of, you know, it works. It's been there from Spring Framework 1.0. It's not a bad way to work. And we certainly, before Java config even existed, that's what we would have used, right? Like one thing that people often ask it when I say often, I mean like twice in my life. One thing that people ask is, how do I drive the creation of beans based on things in a data store? Like what if I have a records in a database, I wanted to use that to create objects? Why? I don't know. But what if I did? Well, how would you do that? Well, you could do that with a bean definition, a bean factory post processor, right? And that whole hierarchy. But it's very low level. You're working, it's like reflection. You're using strings and meta model objects. It's not your objects directly. It's the reflective creation of those objects. Okay. Or another way you could do it, a different way you could do it, is with an application context initializer, right? So you go over here, and and behind the scenes, Spring has this frame called the concept of an application context. So var AC equals new application context, and you'd say new generic application context like that, and you'd put in the beans application dot class, and nope, I guess not. You would do oh, it's sorry, annotation config application context, right? Annotation config that AC dot, and you can run, no, start. There you go. That's the right one. So this is the way it used to work before Spring Boot, right? You create an application context, and then behind the scenes, you can actually register. Can you add the initializer? No, initializer. It's not even there. Where is it? It's a. Well, you could create. There's this concept of a. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Here, watch this. This is how often you do this. Almost never, right? So AC. This is actually a pointer to the same thing. It's an application context, right? And but behind the scenes, you get a chance to you can create this if you want. So a new Spring application builder, okay? And I can create, here's the arguments, okay? And here's the sources, beans application.class, and then AC dot, you can add that, right? So I can say initializers, new application context initializer, and there you go. So I get this callback that's been in Spring Framework for a long time. And you can get a pointer to this configure application context. And then you can say application context dot register. No, that's not it. Is it generic? Maybe it's generic. Goodness. Generic application context. Implement that. Get rid of this. Get rid of that. Okay, there we go. So application context. Register bean. There you go. Okay. So now I'm in a place where I could do what I'm thinking of. I could say locale dot give available locales. Let me just keep it a little bit simpler. Dot filter locale, whatever, locale. Let's see, locale dot get language dot contains dot to lowercase, which of course requires a locale. Imagine, fr. Okay, and then from there, I wanted to visit each locale, and then just register it. So locale. And I can say application context dot register new bean new and it's a supplier, right? So it's a locale aware cart dot class, and then you have a supplier, and oh no. Yeah. Okay, fine. There it is. So I got a supplier, and I get a chance to now return that, right? And I can now inject the locale, and that'll work. You'll get a chance to programmatically build up this graph of objects, and in which case you don't need to do that. So let's see if that works, and if it's terrible. So we don't need this one. Okay, get rid of that, and that. Actually, get rid of all that. And what's the issue now?
You have a configuration that didn't get deleted.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I didn't enumerate the carts. So let's just create one more bean here. And I'll say application runner. I'm going to inject all the locale carts by their bean name. So I'll say, here we go. And I'm going to say carts dot for each. Fantastic. So go over here, get rid of that, reload, turn that into dash. Okay, there you go. So I've got locale cart. That's not correct. Language contains, oh, okay, that is correct. No, that's not correct. Why is it just fr? What's the, is it the bean name? Okay, let's try that. How about, okay. Get language cart. Let's try that. What? Am I looking at the wrong object? Anybody here Get display, get language tag.
When you're filtering out the
Oh, filter. All right, that's what I'm saying. It
so that's gonna limit.
get. I thought it was like there should be hundreds of French, not hundreds, dozens of French-speaking countries, right? Or locales, more than one certainly. There we go. Gee, okay. Anyway, I've never used a computer before. Forgive me. Anyway, my point is, the point is, look, you can. I've dynamically generated a bunch of objects here. Okay, woohoo! How often do you need to do this? Probably not very often, but it's a thing that happens. And if you want to do it, you can do something like this where it's very much not the same part of the component model. You have to get control of the application context. You have to configure this before the context gets started. You end up refactoring your main method, which is, I've got main methods that I haven't touched since I created the project in 2014, right? Like once Spring Boot has generated my main method, it's sacred. I never modify that. It's just Spring application.run, the class name, and then args. That's all it needs to be. If it's anything more, I've done something wrong. So I don't like having to do this. Or I could do the Bean Factory post-process stuff. Either way, don't like it, right? So what we have now in Spring Framework 7 is this new Bean registrar stuff. So I'm going to restore this .run, beans applications.run, okay? Good. And the way it would work is you create a, cart bean registrar implements bean registrar, okay? Okay, and this is just it's an interface. You can register this with Spring just like you would import it, just like you would any other Java config. So at import.class, okay? And now I can do whatever I want. I've got a pointer to the bean registry and the current environment. So let's say I wanted to start small. Let's say register.bean locale aware. So I can say default locale aware cart. And then I want to return a type of, let's say I have a no argument version here, locale aware cart, return this locale.default, okay? Well, it's got a default constructor, so this is enough. Let's just try that and see where that gets us. So I've got the one, okay? Can you see that, by the way? Okay, so I've got the one. That works fine. That's sort of like if I went over here and I did locale aware cart, and I did whatever, did default, right? It's the same thing, 1-to-1. And actually this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 4 lines of code. That's 1 line of code. Okay, not bad. I like that. But what if I go back over here and I only want to create this if there's a property? What if I have a property over here that says locale carts dot enabled is equal to true? Okay. So I go over here, I can say conditional on property value, having value equals true, match if missing is false. Okay, so it has to be true. If it's false, it doesn't work. Default, yeah, there you go. So let's try that. So did I specify such a property? I did not. I've commented it out. Okay. Oh, whoops, I've got it down here still. Okay, so nothing is being created yet. I've got that condition that's guarding this from being created. Re-enable it. Reload. And you can see I've got this default one. Okay, so that's a condition, but I'm using at conditional and I've got a bean. Well, if I want to create a custom condition, let's say the Dow Jones is above a certain threshold, or Venus is in retrograde or whatever. I don't know, whatever. Like the point is, if you have these other conditions you want to express, you have to drop down to Spring Framework's at conditional. Hello, at conditional, and then provide a conditional class. A condition class. You have to write your own implementation of condition, and then that can do whatever test you want, and it returns basically true or false. And based on that, the bean will be created or not created. So we have a bunch of these that are provided for you in Spring Boot, but a lot of them are like, okay, is a class present? Is there a bean of this type? Whatever, right? Am I running in a servlet container versus standalone? Am I public static void main or just a web app? Whatever. But the point is, it's sort of, a lot of times you just want to do an if else, right? Okay. Nope. Nope. Oh, man. Nope. Oh, God. Nope. Oh, I'm so sad. Is now good. So I started a spiritual journey earlier this year. I've undertaken a spiritual journey, and I'm learning Vim motions. Now, Vim motions are it's a cult. It's a way of navigating text in Vim, and it is, so I'm told by everybody, better. And I'm getting there. And this has come at a very weird time in my life. You see, I just came from Spring IO, the conference in Barcelona. So springio.net 2025. This one. I just came from this a few months ago, right? And do they have the sessions? Sessions, let's see. And yeah, this is very awkward, very awkward. Here's a presentation from Anton Arhipov. He's a developer advocate over at JetBrains. And he's got a presentation on how to use IntelliJ, and it's called El Rapido, coding like Josh Long. And I am Josh Long. So imagine my chagrin when I've lost my ability to code like Josh Long because I'm trying to learn Vim. Oh, this is a very, very weird, very awkward conference. Very awkward. Anyway, my point is I'll get there. Let's check back in another 5 years. Anyway, so if I wanted to like make this kind of arrangement and I wanted to have dynamic beans and all that, well, what I want is to check the environment. So I could rewrite that. I could say if env is true, then register the bean. Okay. So now I can remove all that. Okay. And there you go. I've got my default one, fair. What if I wanted to also generate a bunch of them dynamically? Well, and by the way, you can see what's happening here. I'm using the Spring Framework environment. Okay. Goodbye. I'm testing for the presence of something, and I don't have to create a class, don't have to create a condition, don't have to use the annotation. It's just write a test, write an if, write an else, you know? And then I can also do the thing with the dynamic stuff. I can locale dot get locales dot for each locale, and then l dot language tag dot contains dot fr dot two lowercase locale dot root, okay, dot for each, no, that's filter, dot for each locale, and then new locale OL cart, voila, okay. So that's nice, I can do that. Run this again. What did I do? Oh, I just did that? That is so sad. That is so sad. You people, you deserve better. So let's see, locale, registry, register bean, and we're gonna call this locale language tag cart, and then the next thing is locale aware cart dot class, and then if I want to really specify lots of knobs and wheels here, I can provide the description. So it's a locale aware cart for, there we go, and then I can provide the supplier. So supplier, new function supplier, and I get a chance to then provide that definition here. So new locale aware cart, passing that in, place it with a lambda, and that's it, right? So and you don't have to do all this stuff. You can just specify the supplier. That's usually enough. And let's see, okay, and let's try that. Okay, there you go. Same result, but now I've got this very dynamic thing. I can register as many objects as I want. If I want to just do a one-liner, it's actually more concise than the Java config option. And you don't even have to specify a bean name in that case. You can just do .class. So it's actually shorter than the Java config model, but you can scale it out to be very dynamic and have conditionals, have for loops, and have all these other things while staying in the same abstraction. And it lives in the same life cycle and participates in the same component model as Java config, so you can import it and use it in the same way. And one last thing here is that this also works perfectly with GraalVM, which is huge for me because I love GraalVM. So kick that off here, GraalVM. The Bean Factory post-process stuff and the application context initializer stuff can be made to work in GraalVM, but there are life cycle issues, and because you're doing meta model reflective kind of programming, you have to register type hints for GraalVM. All this kind of stuff just makes it a little bit less pleasant. This just works, TM, you know, at least for the config stuff. I mean, you might, if you're doing reflection or whatever of your own in your constructor or whatever, then you need to account for that. But there, so here we go, target, beans. There we go. Just works.
Where is the register called in the life cycle if you need other beans to inject?
Ah ha ha. You want to inject? Okay, so let's refactor this supplier here. Where's my supplier? Here it is. So I have the chance to inject. Thank you for that perfect question. I would have felt really stupid if I left this discussion without having talked about that. Okay, so I've got the context there. Now I want to look up another collaborating object, context.bean. All right. So I can look up a pointer to a data source or whatever, or DS, and then provide that in there. All right. So it gets evaluated at the right time. You don't have to worry about life cycle. You don't have to worry about eagerly initializing something that shouldn't be initialized. It just works. And it works in GraalVM, which is sort of the point. That's a freaking great. Oh, can you imagine if we had gotten off stage without talking about dependency injection in the framework that does dependency injection? So awkward. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, that's so that, let me see. Did I get everything? GraalVM? Yeah, whatever. We're good.
Meant to say that GraalVM's native image. Haven't seen Java in 10 years. But Graal
Oh,
Java.
oh yeah. So here's this program, right? Great point. Target beans. Boing, okay. That started up in 10 milliseconds, right? Which is that right? Is that 10? Yeah, it's 10 milliseconds. Yeah. So that's fast for those of you who are not sure. Like it's really fast. But much more importantly, if you had this, I can't measure it because the process is already gone. But if you kept the process running, like, let me try it. Actually, here, let me just, how do I get a thread.join? Will that keep the process running? Yeah. Okay. Let's do that then.
Fred not sleep forever.
There you go. Thread.sleep.
Sleep. That'll do it.
That's 60. Okay, and then an exception. Okay, so I'm going to recompile this program. Target beans. Drink some coffee. Oh, I'll be done in 1 minute and whatever number of seconds it takes to compile.
We're good at 8:15.
Don't tell me that. Well, let's just leave by 8. Okay. I tried to inject the data source. Oh, I'm glad you get, see, this is my fault. Oops. Okay. The worst part is I didn't even use it. My God, I paid the penalty of a delay for a thing I didn't even use. And that supplier context, by the way, it's like supplier context dot, you get a provider too. So if you want it to be lazily, like you can say, if, get if available, right? Like you can get it lazily. You can ask it, you can say, hey, Spring, do you have this bean? If so, give it to me. If not, give me a null or give me another thing. Okay, so there's the application. It's up and running, started up in no time at all. Here's the process identifier, PS-O RSS. That's the resident set size. That's in kilobytes. So divide by 1,000, 41 megs of RAM, right, to run this program. So now imagine and that's a native Mac binary. You need no JVM to run that, right? There's no Java at all anymore. It's just on Windows, if you did the same exact compilation, you'd get beans.exe. On Linux, you just get beans. On Mac, you get beans. You know what I'm saying? It's a native binary that only runs on that operating system. So now I can distribute a CLI, a web server, a command line program, a shell, anything, build it in Spring, and then ship it as a native binary. I need no other dependencies, nothing. Take that node. Right? I am, but it's this, I'm using Spring Boot, which has yeah, but it has, you're right. But behind the scenes, it in turn is invoking something called the native image, right? So native image is a command line tool that's installed with my GraalVM JDK. I'm using GraalVM, which is an open JDK distribution from Oracle. Oracle provides open JDK, Oracle VM, and then and that's open source. And then the same day, not Oracle, the open JDK is open source. And then the same day GraalVM gets released. And it's all of open JDK plus some extra toys like this. And this is also open source.
Occasionally, you do a hateful thing of making an installer for Windows.
Yeah, this is,
That also.
yeah. I mean, you don't, it doesn't make it an installer, but what's to install? You just double click and you run. So you can imagine building a JavaFX or a Swing app, you know, like you could double click, you've got an instantly fast UI that starts up and it has access to all of Java and anybody can run it. It could be, imagine building a CLI. You know, there's a project called Spring Shell. You can do tab completion, you get new line support, you get read line, session history, tables, all that is in the Spring Shell and it's all built for this. I mean, it's not for, it's built so you can do CLIs and shells, like actual REPLs with the, you know, dash tab and it'll show you options and that kind of stuff, right? And prompts, and you can change your prompt based on whether somebody's logged in or not, or based on some state that you determine. And that worked before on the JVM, but you had to distribute the JVM and it started up a little bit slowly. Now it's a native image. Like, screw it, take that, go. I mean, you don't like, there's no, come on. You can do scripting with Java, JavaScript, you can do native images and everything in between, right? It's an amazing time to be a Java 25 and Spring user.
It's-
Thank you
the
so
native
much.
image is not for everyone. So what it does, it looks at your class path. And then it goes through every class and every method
Yeah.
and compiles it into a native cycle, meaning if you had 10 gigs of source code and you're only
Oh.
using 50 megs of it, you're gonna have a memory footprint of 10 gigs because it loads it all.
No, only for compilation. Yeah, not for the final
If-
effect.
If your source code, if Graal can't figure out that you're only using 50 out of the 100, meaning your source code, the class files itself is
Right.
10 gigs.
Right.
It has to build that into the image.
Oh, but it won't. That's what I'm saying. It does dead tree pruning. So the resulting, that's actually exactly what you just said is the benefit is it does dead tree shaking. So it'll go through all the code in your source code, find all the code in the class path and all the code in the JRE. If you're not using it, it throws it away, which is the source of if there's one frustration with GraalVM, it's that sometimes you're going to do something dynamic at runtime, like reflection,
Doesn't-
and it doesn't know that, but it will throw it away. It's overlay. So the resulting binary has a very small footprint. It's the security surface area is nil, basically, compared to what you have. You're not shipping a full, because remember, what is a JIT? It's a C++ compiler that you run in your memory, in your Java program, in production. It transpiles your class files into C++ code or native code. Why would you want that shipped in your production environment, right? You have a compiler there, sitting there. With this, you get rid of that. So it doesn't have that in memory. It doesn't have all the code that you're not using. If you're not using Java auth and Swing, guess what? It's not in the resulting binary, you know? And also log4shell, that can't happen with this. You can't dynamically instantiate classes that you haven't explicitly provided configuration for. And so there is, like you said, there is some pain.
There's some pain. You can't unload classes, maybe you can't
Right.
shrink the memory size of your
Yeah.
object.
And it's as fast as it's going to be. So like with JVM, you compile .class file and you run it on Java 25, it's fast. Java 35 comes out, now it's quantum. Guess what? Same class file, just run it in the new thing, it's faster. With this, no can do, you got to recompile. You know, but it does have some good benefits and it's I don't know, I don't everything I build and every demo I do, I end with GraalVM because that's just it's too good. Anyway, and this works nicely too. Like I said, the other two the application context initializers and the Bean factory post processors, they work, but you have to be, you know, just use this. This is good. Any questions in the brief waning few minutes? Besides, where's the highway? Yes, sir.
I said it's right there.
Oh,
I may get this terminology wrong, I'm just trying to figure it out. In Spring manages its own context with some sort of.
Yeah.
Is that the same mechanism that you're using here directly? Like, is it the same set of classes that are being invoked?
you mean the application context?
Yeah, what your being provider.
Yeah, yeah. And so behind the scenes, this is just a DSL for the application context. Yeah.
Okay.
Because Spring at the end of the day is just a framework for managing Java objects, and they can depend on and relate to each other. And you can do it with Java config, with a add configuration, add component, add service. You can do it explicitly by doing add configuration with Bean methods, right? You can do it with XML. Don't do that ever. You can do it with, you remember. I don't know who else would remember, but there's a properties file, Bean loader, Bean loader. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Spring doesn't care how you tell it about how these things wire up, but ultimately they all get normalized into this thing called a Bean definition. And so by the time you've got bean definitions, Spring throws away all the other, it doesn't care about whether it came from a class or component scanning or XML or properties or whatever. And then once they're bean definitions, if it's all validated, if all the objects relate to each other and there's no missing references and all that, and there's no cyclical references, then Spring creates the objects and off your program goes. This is just another way to give it that information. Right? You're explicitly wiring up the objects via this bean registrar.
There was somewhere though that you gave it a context, right? Said my own context and you provided string.
You mean when I had the application context? That's okay.
Well, what it was showing is how you could have achieved it before,
Yeah.
Oh,
and then
okay.
this is how you can achieve it now with the new version of Spring Forward.
I wanted you to feel the
Pain.
pain with me and understand why this is so much better. Yeah, yeah. It's okay to forget it. I'm trying to. Yeah. I'm happy to forget it and you should too. So like, yeah, you don't need this. You shouldn't need to know about the application context. It's a smell if you do, right? No, really, like remember when the old days of Spring, when Spring first came out, we were saying, if you know about if your business code is aware of the fact that it's inside of Spring, that's a smell, right? You shouldn't be aware of the context in which you run, right? Like that means that either you're doing it wrong or we did something wrong. Either way, it's not good. Yeah. Wow.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. Thanks for getting thank you. This guy right here. That was good. Java 25 I can't believe it's going to be Java 25 already.
So are you saying the next presentation will be Emacs? not IntelliJ?
I'm an Emacs human. I've been using it for decades and like it's pretty easy to understand why, right? Emacs comes out with new versions every few months.
You could have-
Yeah.